Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the, what is it called?
The Ed and Joe Show.
Joe Show. That's it. Just like that, it's getting cold out, boys. Oh, my goodness.
snap
It's a little bit chilly out there. Welcome, everybody. We'll talk about, we're going to talk about city issues, of course. Plenty of things to talk about, but we have a guest tonight for the first half hour, something that should be to interest to, of course, all the city fathers, brothers, sisters, and mothers, and all the parents and teachers' assessments of your children starting in second grade. Kelley, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Kelley. Go ahead and
well, let's talk about, I don't know how many people out there know what's really setting it up, but
okay, a brief setup. Kelley, a few weeks ago, wrote a letter. She's a veteran Manchester school teacher of 22 years, and she wrote an op-ed a letter to the editor, a union leader. It appeared on a few other sites too, basically expressing her frustrations with basically the handcuffing and the shackling that she's experiencing. Okay, red tape, paperwork, excessive assessments. Okay, and Kelley, if I'm wrong, feel free to step in and correct me. And that's one of the things I want to do tonight, folks. I want to get down to the specifics. I want to be very clear. Okay, having said that, welcome, Kelley. I'm glad you came on tonight. One thing we were talking about a bit earlier, when you wrote your letter, it's not, I think people have a tendency to look at it and say, okay, another teacher coming out saying they want more money, what's new under the sun? That's not really what it was about. Perhaps to a certain degree, but one of your issues was the excessive assessments of the children, emphasis on excessive.
Yes.
You said the other night at the school board meeting that perhaps there is a role for assessments, maybe a few, 2, 3 a year, I don't know, something like that, but they're doing several per year. So even if the school district were to hire 87 subs or assessors to do these assessments and take the burden off of you, it would still be wrong. It would still be a waste of time because the children would be getting assessed and not learning.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
Okay, so yes, let me start with my letter. This does have nothing to do with money, my contract. I'm happy with my job. I get health insurance through my husband. Nothing to do with that. The day that the letter came about was one of my breaking point days. We had 8 or 9 math assessments, 9 hours of computerized assessments. We have our new math standards where, they say, here are the standards, this is what you need to teach, but they haven't given us any tools to teach it, which again, I'm okay with. I'm creative, I'm a teacher, I have a great team, we co-plan, but it involved a lot of runoffs. And then on that same day, while the assessing was building up on me, we got an email stating, we need to hold back, we're running out of paper, we can't purchase anytime soon. And then on the same day, I received another email stating we weren't going to be getting folk tales and fables because that's another one of our standards that we need to teach. And it just happened that it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. So it has nothing to do with money. I just was frustrated. But yes, my main point is assessments.
What school do you teach at?
I am at McDonough Elementary School, and again, I can really only speak to my experiences. I state the facts, I keep a log, everything I have is true. And to the point, we've had the 48th day of school. I've spent 24 hours testing my students. 13 of those hours were done one-on-one assessments. We've had 14 math assessments to date. Tomorrow I have another one to give, as well as I'm being pulled out of my classroom for a 2-hour Dr. Bob meeting, and we'll go back to that in a second because Dr. Bob has been at one meeting, and we've had, tomorrow's the 4th.
Okay. Now, Dr. Bob is the guy who gave the presentation at the Board of School Committee. He's basically what you'd call an educrat, and he loves this stuff. He's a proponent of it, and he gave a lot of acronyms and a lot of edge-speak.
Let's talk about a little bit before we get into first grade. What do you expect it to know in first grade? So when you come in, hopefully you've gone to some sort of preschool, you've gone to some sort of kindergarten, you come into first grade. Are you supposed to know 2 + 2 is 4 by first grade?
Yes.
Okay, so when you get to second grade, you're supposed to know 2 times 2 is 4.
We're not, no. To be quite honest with you, I don't know when multiplication is going to come in, because what we receive from the district is we receive our monthly standards. So, for example, I was told in September, I have 6 standards to teach in math, and they are anywhere from well, I can tell you about my October ones because they're in my mind. It was telling time to the 5 minutes. It was counting coins. It was doing counting by 10 and 100, by tens and hundreds in your mind. Money, math, clocks. Just word problems. There's a lot of things. However,
Do they assess in first grade?
yes.
Okay, so they start the assessment process in the first grade. Is that something that's new? In other words, did they assess 5 years ago? Did they assess 4 years ago?
Okay, so when I was in the classroom 7 years ago, we have always had assessments, okay? We have always had what I consider meaningful assessments, assessments that I would use to drive my instruction.
Are they assessments that were handed down from the state, or your own assessments in our own school district?
Okay, well, we would have like math trimester tests, so you would be expected to teach for a trimester. You had your grade level expectations, and we would teach for the trimester, and then we would give an assessment to see how they were doing, and then from there we could modify our teaching to either excel with the kids that exceeded or slow it down for the ones that struggled. Now we have timed math addition and subtraction facts. These are new. We have computation assessments. Now, keep in mind, these computation assessments that started in September began with 2-digit addition and subtraction, where I am teaching my children 5 plus 5 equals 10. So when you hand these to the students, they look at you and they're like, but Mrs. Tambouris, what do I do? And they tell us, oh, make it fun,
Yeah.
Right.
I tell them over and over, boys and girls, because the first thing, is this on a report card? No, it's not on your report card. This is just for Mrs. Tambouris to see what you know, and da-da-da-da-da.
Now, back in my day, I would ask that when we had assessments years ago, right? Not as many. I always asked, does this count on our report card? Teacher would say no. I'd say, okay, here you go. I just whipped through it. I didn't care. It didn't count on a report card. But they're giving a lot of weight to these things.
Yes.
Now, when I first read your letter, I said to myself, my God, this is really ridiculous. Now that she's basically a whistleblower, she's come out with it, certainly something's going to be done. Call me naive, right? Well, since you've written a letter, it seems like, well, we know that Dr. Livingston and Dave Ryan, they support this stuff.
They dug their heels.
They support this stuff.
So take us now from first grade, they come into second grade, they come in their first week, they're excited, they're happy. When's your first assessment test? Let me get right into the.
I have the calendar.
I'm trying to let people understand what the difference is. What used to be what we. One more question, just
sure.
Kind of interestingly.
Sure.
Are children different today than they were 10 years ago, or are they learning the same basic things? 2 plus 2 is 4. Or, in other words, do they expect these kids to all of a sudden, because they have an iPad and there's computers or something, they just all of a sudden they're in second and we're pushing them faster?
Oh, no, we're pushing them faster.
Okay.
It is, with our new standards came new standards. For example, in kindergarten, at the end of the year, they were expected to read we do our reading levels A to Z, okay? It's just a Fountas and Pinnell benchmark system. So by the end of kindergarten, they were expected to read at a level C. Now it's a level D.
Okay.
Things have been bumped up. The standards have been raised.
And how many children do you have in your classroom?
In my classroom, I'm lucky. I only have 22.
Okay, and do you have an assistant with you in the classroom?
No.
All right, so you're 22, hands-on, and everybody comes with a different background,
yes,
a different learning
and
capacity.
22, and we talked about reading levels. In my classroom, I have students reading at a level B, which is pre-kindergarten, to students that are reading at a level O, and our level, according to the NEWA, they're in like the 4th grade level category.
Okay, so if you have a child at a level O, and he or she is doing exceptionally well and doing really well in these assessments, do they get to go to the head of the class do they get to skip a grade, or?
Not that I've been told.
Okay, so and then the ones that you have that are lagging, or they have whatever issues, dyslexic, or if they have parents that don't speak English and they don't get help at home, where do they go? Do they stay back, or are we pushing them forward?
Well, a lot of them do have IEPs, you know, or we bring them to a child study team.
Individual education program.
Exactly. They do receive special ed services. You know, they get a pull out with their learning disability specialist. This is my dilemma, is that in my old days of it in my classroom, 7 years ago when I was in the classroom, I would do these assessments and the teacher-driven assessments, and I was like the differentiation queen. I would have groups for my excelling kids. I would have them pushing above and beyond. For my low kids, I would have groups, and I would meet with them more often.
Okay.
And in my middle kids, I would push them through as they needed. But now I have no time for that.
Okay.
Because you're doing the assessments.
All I do is
assessments.
test.
Okay, so
Right.
we built a foundation. Now I think
Yes.
people have an understanding. Okay, take us right through your schedule. Second grade, they're in.
Okay.
We're 48 days into the school year. Obviously, for a teacher to write as lengthy and long and as thoughtful of a first-year email and sent it to everybody, you're obviously speaking for, I'm sure, many teachers,
yes.
and also feeling very frustrated with the system. So now I think we have a pretty good understanding and frustration. Explain to us what the hell is going on with all this assessment now.
Okay. First of all, let me be clear. Part of me is speaking for the teachers, but I'm really speaking for the kids.
I wanted to ask you that. You're not an MEA rep, right?
No,
Okay,
no.
you're doing this basically on your own?
Yes.
You're a member of the MEA?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
I just wanted to clear
Yes.
that up. Terrific.
And,
All right.
and I will tell you, too, there are so many teachers feeling the same way, but they're afraid of
Well, you have to be commended for coming
consequences,
forward.
you know, and
Retaliation.
my issue is, and my husband knows, you know, I have a mouth, and when there's something I'm passionate about,
Yeah.
I can't keep it closed, and these children are my
All right,
passion.
one more quick question is, Joe talked about the kids are learning more at an earlier age. Can that backfire? In other words, should we let these kids enjoy their all too brief childhood? Can we overload them and do more damage than good?
I'm not a doctor or an expert.
Right,
From what
but-
I see
and
in
I'm
my
just a
classroom,
jawjacker
though, I
myself.
see anxiety.
Okay,
I
all
see
right.
tummy aches,
All right.
I see anxiety,
All right.
I see tears.
Okay, go ahead with that schedule.
Okay, so just to give you a heads up or an understanding, the first day of school was September 3rd. Our first assessment was September 4th.
Oh, my God.
And that was one from Dr. Bob, and
Oh, my
that was one where I needed to have my children work on place value using up to 4-digit numbers.
Oh, good grief.
And as I stated, some of these kids, you know, some of my
Well,
students...
can you give me an
have-
example of what that is? Because I don't know if I know.
Okay,
Like
so for
1,037?
example, I say, you know, write 1,294, and then I tell them, okay, what's 10 more than 45? What number is 700s, 3 10s, 2 1s?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
bit
and then
much
they
right off
compare
the
and-
bat.
We know we have some work to do, Jamie, so
Yeah.
we have kids at home. We're
Yes.
using this as a way to get ahead, I
Dr.
guess.
Livingston had said at the beginning of school year she wanted learning to start within the first 5 minutes.
Hmm.
My first day of school, I was always like, let's ease into this. You know, no need to jump right
So
into it.
your second day, you're assessing.
Yes,
Okay.
so-
So,
so
what do you
sep-
tell your students? Okay, by the way, here you go. Here's your test.
Well, no, I do just like I say. I say, boys and girls, Mrs. Tambouris is giving you a piece of paper, and on this paper, it's just, I know it's going to be hard. I just want you to do the best that you can. And their eyes are bright and big until I say, okay, write 1,294.
Right.
You know, and then it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What did you say? And then then I work them through each one, and by the end, I mean, I have heads down. It's just they're 7 and 8-year-olds. It just breaks my heart. And what breaks my heart is even more is that I feel like a failure.
Yeah.
You know, I've cried many tears because I feel like I'm failing these kids.
Okay.
And
not.
I don't know what else to do.
Kelly, we mentioned briefly that the Dr. Livingston, Dave Ryan, they're on board with the assessments. Have you also noticed that certain members of the Board of School Committee are also on board with this, or at least not critical of it, at least not on your side?
I will tell you, I have had many school board members contact me. Even Joe contacted me, and I thanked Robin Dunphy actually came into my classroom because I'm not afraid.
Yep.
I've asked people,
Yeah.
come into my classroom and see it firsthand because it's not I'm not fibbing.
No,
it's
right.
it's
I
true.
don't think anybody does. I really think now that this is first when you send something out, people go, okay, what's this about? But
Right.
you've been very consistent. Okay, so the 4th you have an assessment. What's the next one? It looks like
So then September was pretty calm. The next thing we had was a 2-hour meeting where I was pulled out and the kids were with a sub on the 11th for the Dr. Bob meeting. Then the 12th was an addition facts assessment. 18th was a computation assessment. 19th was when we started the NEWA, and that's a biggie. That's a computerized test. It took 90 minutes. Now imagine a 7-year-old sitting behind a computer for 90
Goodness.
minutes.
What's NEWA stand for?
doing like a
New
multiple
England?
choice type test.
It's on the computer, and what it is in reading, they get asked questions, or there are stories that they have to read and ask questions, and as they pass them, the questions get more difficult. So it's to find their level. Now here's one of my problems. If the NEWA is so wonderful and beneficial, it tests reading, math, and literacy. Well, then why are we doing more math, more reading, sight words? It's redundancy. I am not against assessment. Like I said, I love to use assessment to drive my
To a
instruction.
certain extent.
If it's proper.
Okay, and if it's proper.
And if
And only to a
it's
certain extent.
developmentally appropriate.
Okay,
You know,
yep.
that's my feeling.
Well, what about the devil advocate position, which I'm sure you run into every single day as well? If we know what they don't know, we can do better at teaching them what they should know. Mm-hmm. Did I say that properly?
I know what you're saying.
Okay.
But why don't you let me teach them first?
Right.
And then I can
Well,
assess them and see where they're struggling.
That brings me to my question, Kelly. I'm a layman here, but I want to ask, can't the curriculum itself serve as an assessment tool? In other words, you have a tried and true curriculum, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a group of kids. Some of those kids are going to do very well, some of those kids are going to do average, and some of those kids aren't going to do so well.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that in itself an assessment tool? Do you need assessment on top of the curriculum?
There are benefits. Okay, for
Okay.
example, the running records that we're doing, these are one-on-one with the children, and what we're doing is we're seeing exactly what they can do in reading. So
Okay.
it is time consuming, and that is an assessment that I feel is beneficial.
Okay, so you're a proponent of running records.
Yes.
Terrific.
Yes.
You're not a scorched
Yes.
earth here.
No,
It's not
and I'm a
damning-
proponent of assessing after I've taught, so
After
that I
you've
can
taught.
see what I need to reteach
Okay.
or move forward
Yeah.
So
with.
what's the difference between a quiz and an assessment? I've taken 6 million quizzes. I've probably taken one assessment test in 6th grade way back when. So the quiz is, you say, okay, I've taught you how to spell apple and pear, etc. At the end of Friday, let's see if you've learned how to spell apple and pear, etc. The
Right.
assessment is different because it's assuming you know things?
Yes, the quiz is teacher directed.
Right.
I haven't had a chance to give a quiz of my own. I don't have
What?
the heart to give a quiz of
You haven't
my
given
own.
a quiz of your own? Today's
No.
November 12th?
Because they've been assessed so
Because they've
much.
been assessed
Oh,
so
my
much.
goodness.
Would be more-
gracious.
Is this really I'm starting to think about this a little bit now. Is this really because is this some way of beating down teachers to force teachers to teach differently? Or, I mean, do your books that they have in 2nd grade coincide with the assessments? Or are they, I mean, in other words, have they caught up to what you're assessing now?
We don't have math books. We weren't given them.
What the
All right, so you're teaching math. So do you know what the assessment tests are, like, before you're given the assessments, or are they sent to you through the mail?
We just started receiving emails from Mr. Ryan saying like what the monthly assessments are. But another thing is McDonough is different too, because we're Title I school and we have the Dr. Bob.
Who's
As
Dr.
far as I
Bob?
know,
Is this a guy or a book or a computer guy?
I call him the guru, the math guru. He's
Okay.
the one that was coming in to McDonough to micro
Does he
feedback.
work for the city of Manchester? Does he work for the school district?
I really don't know who
Okay.
hired him.
No,
I'm
he's
sorry.
like a
Dr.
state guy, isn't he, or a federal? He's up here.
I
He's the
really
guy
don't know.
shoveling this stuff. Let's see what Buddy has
Our
to
first
say about
caller
this.
coming
Okay.
in has to say,
Buddy, you're on the air.
Buddy, you're on the air.
Yeah, Joe, is this a thing of the classrooms being over full? I having too many kids in the class too. Could that be why these kids aren't learning at this young age?
I don't think that's the. Well, thanks for the comment. Now listen to what he just said. Are they not learning at the right age? I don't think that's the issue. They're not learning at the right age. They're being tested on what they don't know yet. Is that's basically your argument?
Yeah, the standards have reached a higher level. So you know, it's not what it was 7 years ago. These new standards have pushed them higher and harder. However, the kids are coming in the same.
You said something McDonough was different, and then you said
yes.
Mr. Bob. But go back to why McDonough you think is different.
Well, I'm only saying McDonough is different because we are a Title I school, and I don't think all the schools in Manchester have the Dr. Bob.
And
So
what
those
is
are
What is
Title
Title
I?
I?
Federally funded.
Federally funded
Okay.
because,
There's a district in need of
Underperforming?
improvement.
right? Is that what brings in the federal funds?
I think it
believe?
has to do with the socioeconomic.
Socioeconomic, okay.
All right. Well, the best
yeah.
question that was asked, I think 2 meetings ago, was by Beaudry. Are other school districts doing this? The answer was no. Manchester is the only one doing this, compared to our neighbors, probably Bedford, et cetera. So you're not sure if this is being handed down by the state level to the city and told we're doing this at all. No, this is just something that happened this year to you.
Yes.
This didn't happen previously. This just, boom, did they, you started on September 3rd. I don't know. I think you have a couple of meetings before you start school. Did they lay this on you before you started school, or did they lay this on you on the 4th?
No, we had on that teacher workshop day, we did get a chance to meet Dr. Bob. But no, I had no idea all this was coming. It just was like I would go to my mailbox and poof, there's 3 math tests, and oop, give them in the next 2 days, you know?
By the way, folks, Kelly's shirt says a child is more than a test score.
Yes.
So what would happen if you refused to do it? I mean, I don't like to put you in a bad position that way, but if you just said, well, we're just not going to go around that way, I mean, do they have some sort of, can they discipline you for not doing that, or?
Yeah, that would be insubordination.
Okay.
So
and that's something that's written in a handbook somewhere, I'm sure.
Well, I don't know where I read it, but I saw it, and it does say that every student needs to take these assessments.
But at the same time, you have your First Amendment rights, and you have every right to do what you've done.
Right.
And I applaud
Right.
you
And
for
how
it.
many second grade classes are there in your school?
5.
Okay, so there's 5 other there's 4 other teachers that are going through
Yes.
this, and I'm sure you've talked amongst
Oh, yes.
yourselves.
Oh, yes.
And the other 4
Yes.
agree with you.
Yes. Yes.
Kelly, let me ask you, as far as agreeing, have you had a lot of moral support? Have people
Yes.
come up to you and said, good job,
Yes.
I'm glad you did this?
Yes. I have. I mean, I think assessments, because of the Common Core and everything, have peaked in other places. I don't think Manchester is the only one, but from just what I've heard from talking to other people,
Yep.
I have seems like a lot more.
Yep.
But yes, I've actually had a teacher come into my classroom to shake my hand and
Yeah.
say thank you on behalf of the teachers. I've had emails left and right. I've been mailed presents from the public.
All
What
right.
about
Hold
parents?
on, Larry.
Parents, yes, definitely. A lot of parents support. A lot of people saying thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to take Larry's call here, but I got to say, I got to wonder if David Ryan and Dr. Livingston really, at the bottom of their heart, really believe in this stuff, or if they're just touting the company line. But
I think someone's forcing them to
Yeah.
do this. That's my own personal opinion. I don't have any factual basis, but
No. Go ahead,
I've been
Larry.
trying. Go ahead, Larry. You're on the line.
Hey, can we find out who Dr. Bob is?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, well-
Yes.
You know, is he with the federal government? Is
We'll
he?
find out. We'll get a picture.
he's...
No.
Oh,
I have a
sorry.
feeling it looks like
We're,
Keith
we're
Rock.
going to find out, Larry. I hope I didn't cut you off there prematurely.
I
but
know
we're gonna-
he spoke at the last curriculum and instruction
You're right, he
meeting,
did. And what
so-
happened was, I'm sitting there at home, and he just went into what you would call a bunch of edge-speak. It was very dry. It was very boring. He was touting the wonders of assessments and how extremely valuable it is. And
All right, we've got through the month of September, October. We're in November. I have a feeling there's more assessments in here.
Oh, well,
Oh, my
yeah.
Wait a minute.
gracious.
That one looks a lot.
Yeah,
there's
this
a
is
lot more
October.
writing in there.
Yeah.
Is that the lunch menu?
This is my assessment menu. October, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. October was our biggest month, 23 days of school. We had 7 assessment-free days.
7 free days out of
Assessment-free days.
20?
Wait a minute. So how many assessments were there? 20.
13?
Oh, so 7 minus
Well,
23?
yeah,
You're
we
the
had-
math teacher.
Yeah, and a lot of Dr. Bob meetings,
50.
Dr.
fight
Zen
words,
name, Dr.
a lot of
Bob.
one-on-one
Okay, so
meetings.
what? All right, so you're still assessing like crazy in October.
Yeah.
When do you snap, by the way?
When do I snap?
Yeah, when do you
I
snap?
snapped
Then you go,
about.
this is enough.
I snapped on about October 29th.
Okay, so that's when you said this was. I mean, that October was when you said, "Oh my goodness."
Oh, when I wrote the letter, I snapped. That was probably the second week of October.
Okay, because I mean, I read your
Yeah.
letter, and there was
Yeah.
a woman in there who was screaming for help.
Yes.
Now, the reason why I asked you about October, and for that particular reason, what are they learning in October that have they learned everything in September yet? In other words, have they caught up to the assessments of what you've been assessing in September? Why are you giving them assessments in October? Have they caught up to September yet? And where are they in November from October? I mean, I can't imagine these kids can just pull this stuff out. I mean, I've been really singing the ABCs at my house for quite a long time. We're getting there.
You
We're
know-
getting there, but
you
it's
know
not something
what's-
that they just catch on to.
The hard thing is, okay, so
Hold on,
we
Steve.
have addition, subtraction, computation, Dr. Bob place value assessments. So we're teaching basic addition, basic subtraction, place value to the thousands, and the standards, like I said, telling time to the 5 minutes, money. Where's the time?
So let me ask you, what's different from October today, October last year?
Hold on, Steve.
Turn it low.
Much happier teacher,
want me to
much
make a
happier
phone?
classroom?
Well, last year I was a literacy coach.
Okay.
So it was 7 years ago when I was in
7
the
years.
classroom, but 7 years ago, very happy teacher.
Okay. And kids were just moving along nicely?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Why don't we take this call?
I think we just lost him. Steve, you still there?
No, I'm still here.
Okay,
ahead.
great. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate and tell Kelley I support her 100%. I love her shirt because she is more than kids are more than a test score. In fact, today teachers' job is to evaluate, and their teaching is actually evaluation driven rather than knowledge driven. Okay, and
All
if
right.
that's wrong,
Yeah.
teaching doesn't no longer exist. They become testers. They shouldn't be called teachers. They should be called testers.
Okay.
All right.
Our kids need more than that. We've got to worry about the whole child.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. Thank you,
Let me-
Steve.
all right. So what happens now with? Okay, is it? I believe in the bell curve. Bell curve is right like this. You're going to have 3% are going to be excel, 3% are going to just do well in these core classes. This bell curve, middle of the road. We're going to always have that strong bell curve. What happens with the assessment and the kids that? What's happened in October on the 3 or 4 students that just are not going to be able to deal with these assessments? What's going with them? Are they getting special treatment now? Because that's what we're doing. That's what this whole purpose is. If these children are falling behind, then we must. Did they bring in a whole big slew of? Did the Marines come in, pick them up, and say, okay, you're staying after school, and we're going to teach you all this stuff so that you're going to pass the assessment test, or are they just nothing's going on? They're just getting tested, and that's it.
They get their services, like I said, those bottom 3% on the bell curve, they do get individualized instruction from the learning disabilities teacher. But here's the thing, okay? I'm supposed to be the core teacher. I'm number one. These are my kids. These are my responsibility, and I need to be making them progress. So I'm supposed to be number one, and then the services are in addition to. So we call it like double dipping, So they're getting, because they struggle, they need the extra help. What the link missing is me, and I feel awful, but and it's the same. My heart also it aches for the exceeding kids because they deserve a right to keep going. They're really
I wanted to ask you, we often hear about the extra attention that the struggling kids get. What
Right.
about the advanced kids? Are they getting the instruction that they deserve to excel? Sky's the limit?
And currently at McDonough, and I think in all the Manchester schools, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, we do have a 30-minute block. It's called RTI, so response to intervention. So for 30 minutes, what happens is the teachers of the grade level, my team and I get together, and we talk about our students, and we see, okay, these ones are struggling in this area. So they will go off in a small group and get help from, certified instructors. But like I said, my heart is always with the enrichment kids as well. So I make sure that they get into a group where they can excel. So they do get a 30-minute block, but In my old days, I could do it in the classroom.
You had more freedom.
More freedom.
You were not shackled.
Let
and
me ask you:
handcuffed.
if you have five classes all second grade, and you take the bell curve approach, but let's say it's the top 20% in each class, can't you just take all the top 20 from 5 and put them in one class for that particular math class? Take the medium ones, go into this classroom, and then take your slow learners and put them in 2 classes instead of having them all in one room. Is there any kind of a way to? Is there any thought process behind that?
Well, that would be leveling, and we don't.
But leveling not. Oh, so you don't have any leveling.
Except in the RTI block, in that 30-minute block, in a sense, that
Okay.
is leveling, because
And
we're
that's-
getting the students what they need at their level.
Okay. So leveling occurs. So the IEP children are already but you know who they are coming in.
Yes.
Okay, and then you don't know who your Excel students are right away. because
Well, I
they're-
can look at their past.
Okay.
You know, I look at their CUME folders, and I can see. I like to
Okay.
get a feel myself before I
Right.
look at any information.
Do
I
all
get-
of them come from the first grade, or is there people, students that come from other school districts and towns? and-
In my class, I only have one that came from a different school.
So you are following them pretty progressively.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so you get through October. Now we're into November, and we're at November 11, 12 today.
Yep, and the only day that they did not have an assessment was on November 7th, where we went on a field trip to Strawberry Bank.
Now, this is after you've brought this to everybody's attention also.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they're just going to... I listened to Mr. Ryan, and there was the one meeting I caught, and I was actually very appreciative. I thought everyone was having a really professional dialogue that night. And Livingston really, really pounded the table as in, you're going to have to trust us.
There's pushback from the change, I think.
Okay. So did she come to your classroom and sit
No.
down with you? Did Mr. Ryan come
No.
and sit with you? Have they been to your school to sit down with you guys?
No.
Not at all.
No.
And have they had any meetings with a group of teachers to say, okay, this...
Hold on, Robert.
And you had no idea this was coming, so they didn't even have a meeting and say, by the way, you're going to start assessing like crazy.
No.
Does that make you feel suspicious that there's something else going on?
It upsets me, and as a matter of fact, at this last school board meeting Monday night, I went and spoke again,
Yeah.
because at the previous school board meeting, Dr. Livingston had mentioned what we haven't heard from are the teachers that love the change. So my proposal is and not being sarcastic or fresh, is could those teachers please contact me, because I'm an educator. I'm learning every day. If there's something that I could learn to do different, to do better for my children, I would love to go observe those teachers or sit
You're
and
not
talk with
closed-minded.
them.
All right.
No.
All right, go ahead,
So
caller.
are there the other third, fourth, fifth, sixth, they're doing the same thing? They've had this many assessments, or is this just something third and under?
In my school?
Yeah.
I don't, grade 5 does not have Dr. Bob. It's my understanding that it's grades 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, get in there, caller. Go right ahead.
Go ahead, caller.
Hi, I taught post-secondary for 20 years, and I saw a noticeable decline in the motivation on the part of the students. Try to assign homework, they don't want to do it, blah, blah, blah. I'm just wondering if that same thing is occurring at the lower levels in the smaller or lower classes. And the other thing, lastly, I would say, I would have to disagree with the assessment on a bell-shaped curve. I can't see where somebody has to get a flunk, an F. I just
Well, my point of the bell
pull everybody up to par.
my point of the bell curve is I just think that's there. I don't say everybody's in a bell curve. I just, through my years and years and years of education, it just seems that the bell curve is there. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we create a bell curve. I just think you're going to always find there's going to be a certain percentage, whatever that percentage may be, that's going to excel, and then a certain percentage that's just not going to, and then you have your people that are in the middle. That's why they call it a bell curve. So I only say that because I'm wondering where the middle is in all of this. So the middle is the one that usually gets hurt, because the exceller is always going to excel, and they're probably getting some help somewhere, and the bottom is always going to have their problems, but at least they're getting some help. What about those people that are driving down the chute? Thank you for your call, by the way. What's going on with the people in the middle of that? And that's where the majority of your students are, I would imagine.
My fear is that because of all the time lost of instruction, that they're going to fall behind.
Okay.
The caller,
That's one of my fears.
The caller mentioned unmotivated kids. Obviously, you've got a lot of, like we said before, socioeconomic problems, unmotivated kids. We go on and on with that. That's just part of the whole mix that you're dealing with. Am I right?
Well, to be honest, my kids are not unmotivated.
Oh, okay.
They love
All right.
coming to
Oh,
school.
great. All right.
They, every day when we had a half day because of parent-teacher conferences, we were talking and they were like, "But Mrs. Tambouris, we're sad we don't get to be here the whole day."
Yeah.
They love coming to school.
Right.
My children love coming to school. They love. I get the notes all the time. I
Yep.
love you.
Yep.
But and homework is an issue. I don't harp on homework. I send homework home because it's required of me to.
Yeah.
But my homework is I ask my kids to do a 20-minute reading,
Yeah.
and they keep a reading log. And if they need books at
Discuss it.
home, I give them books to
Yeah.
take.
By the way, before we go any further, Kelly, we're about to make history here. I want to, before I forget, you're the second person to receive the Kudos Award here on this show, but you're going to be the first person to actually, literally, physically receive a kudos. So
Oh,
before I forget,
thank you.
history is made today. That's your kudos bar.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
It's been in Ed's trunk for 3 months. The heat may have gone up or down.
That's
We don't
all
know.
right.
You gotta call.
Is
That's
he on
great.
ya, or-
he's giving out kudo bars? It's
Yeah.
a new little thing he's got going. You got a call? Yeah, we'll take it. We're gonna keep you here because this is.
Sure.
Why not?
I still have
Yep.
a lot more questions to
Yeah.
actually go through here.
Go ahead,
I'm
caller,
sure
get
the
in there.
Callers are obviously very interested in this subject. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air. Go ahead.
I want to commend Joe and Sapienza for having this woman on. Finally, they're trying to recognize the educational issues in Manchester. And I've given the facts before. When you have 2,500 students that are ELL, 2,600 students that are special needs, and 504, you have a 50% of the kids that are reduced lunch, almost 17% of the kids live in poverty, and this woman here with a class of 22 with no assistant is trying to educate children that are such a diversity. I mean, I commend her for standing up to the educational system in Manchester. Dr. Livingston is way overhead. I cannot understand. She has no understanding of what's going on in the city of Manchester.
Appreciate
All right,
the
well,
call.
thank
and
you very much, Jack.
I will say something that I think is important. I think that when we hire superintendents for our school district, we need to hire somebody who's actually been a teacher or somebody who's been an administrator in the school district. Or at least we should, I mean, there was a woman named Tessier that I think to this day people still wish we had gotten her in. And for whatever reason, because she was one of those who stood up and made the noise and made some complaints. That's where it hurts people down the road. But we need to start rewarding people who stand up and fight for what they believe in instead of shunning them or pushing them down. We're not always going to agree on all the issues, but this show is going to focus for the next year, up until the election time, on what's good about our school system, because you said something that people don't seem to understand. You guys do a phenomenal job. We have 15,000 kids in our school system, and a very high majority of them graduate. And I saw the matching bands at the parade the other day, and I was just like, look at the size of these parades. Look at all the kids out there. We need to start talking about the positive, good things that come out. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, yep, my kid's going to West Point. Yes, this kid's going to Harvard, and it's on and on and on. So you got to be doing something right for
I'll
all
tell
these
you,
things to go on.
It's funny because today was a tough day for me. We had yet another meeting and talking about the assessment we have to give tomorrow. And I got a surprise. A student is 19 years old. She came to visit me today and to tell me that she's in college and studying to be a nurse. So, you're right. I have to focus on the children that I have touched and
Before we go to this caller, hold on one second, caller. I just want to mention, even if you don't support teachers, folks, you'd almost have to support the students.
Yes.
Right? You can almost take the
Yes.
teachers out of this equation and say the endless, excessive red tape, paperwork, BS, and assessments is not right for the students. Anyways, go ahead, caller. Get on in there.
Go ahead, caller. You're on.
Great show. This is Kevin calling from Ward 1 in Manchester.
Yeah, Kevin.
I want to change the subject, if I'm allowed. I want to ask you, guess, what she and the MEA consider a fair contract, and what are they going to do about negotiating negotiations, and what are they looking for that is not being proposed? And I'll hang up and listen.
Okay.
Thank you.
We, if it's, as far as, you're in the 22nd year, you're past the 14-year step program. I guess that's the divide among the teachers, because it basically, you get your COLAs and that's it. I know that's a big issue. I'm going to be talking with a bunch of teachers and MEA officials and having them on the show as we progress forward and start thinking outside the box how we get along here. And we'll, if you want to answer it, you're more than welcome.
I'll just say one thing. Being a teacher to me has never been about my paycheck. And I don't take health insurance benefits from the city. As I stated, I'm on my husband's. The contract negotiations and everything, I understand both sides, but truly, I'm just a teacher, and I love my kids, and I want to do my job. And I'm happy. I'm happy the way I am.
Okay.
And,
Terrific.
Well, you must have started when you were pretty young, so how many more years are you going to be, you're going to stay here, and is this getting you to the point where the frustration has gotten to the point that you'd rather do something else?
Yes.
Or are we going to lose good teachers because of this?
I will be quite honest with you, and I'm not going to call anybody out on the carpet or anything. I can speak about myself. I have started talking to my husband about downsizing, and I have a son in college, but it's not worth. I feel, in a sense, like I'm hurting my kids. I don't want to say abuse, but I feel, in a sense, I became a teacher because of my love for the kids, and to see those light bulbs go off is awesome. And I love the children, and why do I go to school every day now this year is to see my kids.
Well, let me ask
I don't
you,
think it'll be much longer.
you
for
say
me.
that you know what they're doing before they come to your class because you check their, their records in first grade. What about going forward? Have you checked your students over the last couple of years? Well, you haven't taught for 7.
Yes, 7 years.
So, but there's a way to go forward to see how they're going that way, I would think. And then your argument would be, well, we were doing things quite fine because they were progressing quite fine. Where's the law? What makes them change that? In other words, I know that they instituted this massive computer system that they can follow these children, that they have these grades, and that's been at least 5 years that they've had this system in place. Can they not get any information out of those numbers that they already have in front of them?
I've been too removed from the classroom. We didn't have that, Like I said, just to be clear, about 7 years ago I got my master's, and I thought I would go into like a different area. So I was a literacy coach for a while, but I missed the children so much. That's why this year is my first year back in the classroom. The way I've kept in touch with my students is I always get the surprise visits. You have social media, so my students that are now 22, 23 have friend requested me, and so that's how I keep in touch with my former students. But I would track my children now to see how they're doing in the future.
Well, I think I don't know if there's anything else you want to say. I could talk about this for quite some time. I think I have a lot more questions, but you've given me a good foundation. I know a lot of the school board members watch the show. I know the aldermen do, and the mayor does, so I think they've got a good idea what's going on here. I'm kind of interested in why this was done, why it's being done, and I guess what the benefits are. I wish somebody would give me a straight answer as to why they just showed up with a bunch of assessments without telling anybody. And I guess we'll see how it goes, but I don't know. I guess we'll have you back on at the end of the spring, and you can tell us what you think occurred from all of what you went through. You don't think this is going to stop? I don't think you think you're going to stop this in its
no, because
tracks.
what's going to happen is once I finish the reading assessments, we'll have a little lull in December. We'll still have the 5 to 6 math assessments in December, but when January comes around, we have to do the NEWA computer test all over again. We have to start our running records again, our sight word test again. So
all over again?
All over again, and then we do it again in May. And then it comes back in May. So we'll have a little lull in December where it's just math assessments. But like I said, it's taken most of October and every day in November so far, and it's going to happen again in January, and then it's going to happen again in May.
So at second grade, you don't have math books. How does a child study if they want to study more outside the classroom?
Well,
You
like
give them
I
a
said,
piece of paper to go
yeah,
home with
like I
problems
said,
on it?
yeah, we have to research the standards and find materials on the internet to use to teach the children, and then we run
some
off and
problems.
create problems. I like to do a lot of hands-on things in my classrooms with manipulatives and whiteboards, but the home piece is runoffs.
One last question, and we'll have a caller coming in. What's the difference between the students today than 10 years ago? Is there more issues concerning parental breakdown? Is there more divorces? Is there more refugees? Is there a difference between the students you have, not motivation-wise, just the student themselves as a person? Are you seeing any difference, or are we pretty consistent for the last decade?
No, I mean, obviously, statistics show there are more divorces. There are,
Do you notice
a lot
any
of
of that
parents
in the
work.
children's by the way they come to class?
No,
Or are they all
no.
just excited to get in there?
They're all excited. In
and
my
they're just
grade,
fun.
second grade, really, the kids are the same.
So you don't see a lot of any major family issues in that
No.
classroom. Well, that's good to hear, actually.
Yes.
I
Your
think
last
people would
call
be
for the
glad to hear
guest.
that.
Tyler, go ahead quickly with your question, please.
Tyler, you're on. Go
I
ahead.
just want to bring it back to math books real quick. She said there was no money for math books. I was just curious as to where the money is going.
It's a good question. We'll have to ask the school board for that.
We'll,
we will.
yeah. Kelly,
I don't know if, did you ever have math books before?
Yes.
Years ago, right? Yeah.
Yes. Well,
All
they
right.
had the everyday math.
And they don't have
You know,
that.
Which is-
they don't.
All right, folks, we're
All
going to
right.
take a 1 minute break.
1
come
minute,
back,
folks.
and,
Kelly, thanks a ton for coming
we're
on.
gonna talk about
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right.